Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This meeting of the Coventry Town Council will now come to order at 6 p.m. Roll call. Ms. Ludwig? Here. Mrs. Shockley? Here. Mr. LeBlanc? Here. Mrs. Lima? Here. Mrs. Dixon? Here. May I have a motion to adjourn into executive session for the following at 6 p.m. Closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A1 to discussions of job performance, character, physical, or mental health of a person or persons, specifically for the council to discuss candidates for the following board openings: Zoning Board of Review, Ross William Pelletier, and Sewer Subcommittee, Greg Mariozzi and Michael Sakosha. And closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A1, discussions of job performance, character, physical, or mental health of a person or persons, specifically for the council to discuss evaluations of the town manager. May I have a motion? Make motion. Thank you. May I have a second? I'll second it. Thank you. Roll call. Ms. Ludwig? Yes. Mrs. Shockley? Yes. Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon? Yes. 5 yeas, no nays, the motion passes. Members of the public, we will resume at 7 p.m. in public session. We will now adjourn to the executive session. Mr. Pelletier will be out for you just a moment. Okay. Thank you. We're now in public session. May I have a motion to adjourn from executive session at 7:06?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call. Ms. Ludwig?
Here.
Mrs. Shockley?
Here.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Here.
Mrs. Lima?
Here.
Mrs. Dixon, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. May I have a motion to seal the minutes from the executive session?
I'll make a motion.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. Members of the public, the council met in executive session to consider the following. Closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A12, discussion of job performance, character, physical or mental health of a person or persons, specifically for the council to discuss candidates for the following board openings. The zoning board of review and the sewer subcommittee. Members of the public, the council interviewed Mr. Peltier for zoning board of review. No candidates for sewer subcommittee were available for interviews this evening. No decisions were made or discussion to take place. And closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A1, discussion of job performance, character, physical or mental health of a person or persons, specifically for the council to discuss evaluation of the town manager. Members of the public, the discussion took place, no votes were taken. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Mrs. Shockley, please give us the emergency evacuation plan.
Yes. Go out with the exits in the back and go out. Or no.
Thank you so much. Agenda item C2, approval of town council meeting minutes, February 23rd, 2022, and March 1st, 2022, reference pages 13 to 16. Madam Clerk, did you receive any corrections?
For February 23rd.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the amended minutes for February 23rd, 2022, and the minutes for March 1st, 2022?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Mrs. Shockley.
Yes.
Mrs. Lima.
Yes.
Ms. Ludwig.
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc.
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. C3, Dave Florio, Vice Chairperson for the Coventry Public Schools, will present the January 2022 monthly report from the school committee.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the council.
Good evening.
There was great lunch cooking yesterday at the St. Patrick's Day. It was really nice.
Is your
Nice
mic
seeing
on,
you at the Welcome Chat.
Mr. Florio, is your mic on?
It says it's on. It says it's on.
Okay.
Hey, you, Mr. Manager, it was good to see you this week. You tried it. Test. Yeah, it's going through. Okay, very good. Okay. So, with that said, thank you all. I'm looking forward to working with you in unity.
Speak up, Mr. Florio, because we like to hear compliments, and we want to hear about it.
I think members of the school committee all feel the same. So, that said, Mr. Levis put together a report, and I'll read it. The school committee would like to thank all our staff and administration who supported the numerous vaccination clinics that were held over the past several months at Coventry. We would also like to thank emergency management agency assistant Jill D'Ambrose, Chief Reese, Chief Frank Brown, and the numerous police and fire personnel who supported these community events. The vaccination clinics were an example of numerous community organizations working together for the community. 4 Coventry High School students performed Tuesday, January 25th at the Arctic Playhouse and Cabaret. Capacity House was present to hear senior Warren Chuck, senior Jonathan Kenny, Junior, Rain DeCoste, and freshman Addison Norray perform a variety of songs and genres. Alan Sean Feinstein teacher and drama advisor Lisa LaChance, Coventry High School instructor Kristen St. Xavier, and Coventry High School principal Brooke Maycomber attended. Polka Pride was alive in the Opry Theater Playhouse. The school committee recently approved over $800,000 from the American Recovery Act funds to invest in high-quality curriculum at the elementary, middle, and high school level. Quality curriculum in areas of math, English, arts, as well as advanced placement resources and materials. These curriculum materials and resources would typically be funded with state and local funds. Coventry Public School Director of Technology and Envision Technology advisor Jay Longley presented the Zero Trust Initiative that the Coventry Public Schools would like to undertake to protect staff, student, and district information system. Coventry Public Schools have made many improvements in our infrastructure and training progress and to our school community from the cyber attacks since the ransomware attack we experienced in July 2019. Mr. Murphy and Mr. Longley presented a plan that would increase the level of protection throughout our district. Coventry Public Schools recently completed a cyber resiliency review with the Department of Homeland Security. We are awaiting the results. The superintendent would be reaching out to the town manager and town council president to request a joint meeting to discuss the next steps we take to address the major facility needs addressed in a recent necessity of school construction stage 1 and stage 2 proposals. We would like to come to some mutual understanding and resolution so we can move forward to address our failing school facilities. That's it, Madam Chair, Madam Vice President.
Thank you very much.
Councilwoman Chapa, Councilwoman Lima, and Councilman Wood. It's a pleasure working with you.
Thank you so much. And we're happy that the school committee has resumed this monthly report to the town council. We're looking forward to continuing this practice. It's always informative for us to know what's going on with the school committee.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Agenda C4, certificate of recognition to Chloe Ross. Vice President Ludwig will present the certificate.
Chloe, can you and your family come up, please? So this recognition and the next recognition for Hannah were put forward by Councilor Lima and I, and so we'll each read one of them for our outstanding student athletes. So this is for Chloe Ross. The Coventry Town Council wishes to express a sincere congratulations and public recognition for Chloe's exceptional efforts in winning a Rhode Island State Wrestling Championship as a 6th grader, making her the youngest female to win this title in Rhode Island. You've been quoted saying, "I want to show people that it's not just a boy sport and not to underestimate girls." We agree. Chloe is an outstanding student athlete and has inspired future generations of young women to continue joining the sport of wrestling. The Coventry Town Council is proud of Chloe's efforts and hope to see her continue her hard work in future matches. Thank you, Chloe. Great job, Chloe.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Agenda C5, certificate of recognition to Hannah Hawley. Councilmember Lima will present the certificate.
Just ask that Hannah can come up to the podium. Hi, Hannah. Don't be shy. We're celebrating you. The Coventry Town Council wishes to express a sincere congratulations and public recognition for Hannah Hawley's exceptional efforts and talent in being named Best High School Softball Player of Rhode Island by Max Preps. Max Preps is owned by CBS Interactive and is a partnership with over 200,000 high school coaches across the United States. Max Preps annually names one best player in each state each February. Hannah was evaluated based on 2021 statistical information, postseason local and national honors, college commitments, and/or player rankings by Extra Innings Softball, Flow Softball, and Softball America. Hannah is a standout catcher and hitter who was instrumental in leading the Coventry Ogres to a Division I state championship in 2021. The Coventry Town Council is proud of Hannah's efforts and hope to see her continue her hard work on the field in the upcoming season. Congratulations.
Agenda C6, Certificate of Recognition for Tammy Bisard, Chief Frank Brown of the Hopkins Hill Fire District. Tammy Bisard and your family, please come to the podium. Yeah, go ahead.
It's all about you.
Tammy, we have a certificate from the Coventry Town Council, and Chief Brown also has a plaque for you. So we'll let Chief Brown go first.
Yeah, I think before I get to this, I just would like to say that I think if you took the dictionary and you looked up hero, there'd be a picture next to it, and it would be Tammy right here. Certainly what she did that night is heroic. And I'm glad you're here tonight, you're feeling better. But certainly Tammy went above and beyond that night and literally saved two people's lives. So Tammy, on behalf of the Central Coventry Fire District, for your heroic actions on the night of February 10th, 2022, when a fire broke out at Jennifer's Respiratory and Rehabilitation Center, certainly without your quick action, the outcome would have been quite different on that night. So on behalf of the fire department, your efforts, and certainly the patients of the center up there, you're a true hero. And,
Thank you. Thank you. And now the town council.
Oh, okay, I forgot.
Now the town council would like to offer a certificate of recognition. Whereas on February 3rd, 2022, Tammy Bisard was caring for a patient at Genesis Respiratory and Rehabilitation Center, and the fire broke out in the patient's room on the dementia unit floor. Whereas she responded quickly and rushed into a room, attempted to put the fire out with a fire extinguisher, and evacuated patients from the room. Whereas she then organized the floor team to evacuate patients and promptly notified the fire officials. Whereas since this involved a number of patients who needed to be moved due to smoke, Chief Frank Brown of the Hopkins Hill and Central Coventry Fire District raised the event to a level 4 mass casualty incident. Tammy was overcome by smoke herself. Whereas the town council is grateful to Tammy Bisard, the center's staff members, and the local and Rhode Island fire districts who devote themselves to serving and caring for the safety of others. In testimony thereof, and on behalf of the town council, I have hereunto set my name, our hand, and caused the seal of the town to be affixed on this 14th day of March 2022. Congratulations, Tammy. Would you like to say a few words?
I just want to thank everybody involved. I mean, from the night it happened, I wouldn't have been able to do this without my coworkers. I mean, they are the reason also why this happened. So I'd like to recognize them also and just thank everybody from the staff. They were phenomenal. Fire department, police department, everybody involved. I'm proud to have been there and standing here, and everybody is alive and well. So thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to give you the certificate from the town of Coventry. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Brown, for coming this evening. Thank you, everyone. Agenda item D, resolution for discussion and/or action, tax assessors, additions, and abatements from February 2022 through March 2022, reference pages 18 to 21. Resolution is on page 21. Is this Martini here? I will speak on our behalf. Do you have questions? Excellent. The members of the council, Ms. Mills will answer any questions that you have about this report. It's reference pages 18 to 21 with the resolution on page 21. So we'll start off, first of all, may I have a motion to approve the additions and abatements report for February 2022 through March 2022. Thank you. May I have a second? A second. Thank you. Discussion. Mr. Marchand, any comments about this report, or Ms. Mills? Members of the council, any questions or comments about this report? Okay. Roll call vote. Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. Thank you. Item D2, appointment of Megan Rose to the Juvenile Hearing Board, reference pages 22. May I have a motion to appoint Megan Rose to the Juvenile Hearing Board for an unexpired 3-year term of office expiring December 1st, 2023.
Make a motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second motion.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. D3, Coventry Sewer Subcommittee recommendation for approval of sewer tie-ins located at 113 Tioga Avenue, Assessor Plat 32, Lot 76, Unit 1, 2, 4, 6, 7, and 8 by E&D Lucy Real Estate Holdings, LLC, reference pages 23 to 58. The resolution is on page 23. First of all, may I have a motion to approve the sewer tie-in?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Mr. Marchand, any comments?
Not really. If the council has any questions, I'm happy to go into it. This was a redevelopment of an existing structure, and there was an old sewer line that kind of predated the codes, and that's being replaced with new updated sewer lines, clean outs, access to service, and it's been reviewed and approved and recommended by the sewer subcommittee.
Any other questions by members of the council? Mr. Marchand, I do have a question. I did not see an application for unit number 5, but it is listed on page 53 of 88 as part of the units that are presently connected to the sewer line.
Correct. It's already connected, so it's not part of the tie-in application.
But there was a list of others, but there were applications for each of them in our packet except for unit 5. So I didn't know if that was just a mistake or whether I missed something.
My understanding is it wasn't part of the application for a new tie-in. It's on a separate line.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? A roll call vote. Are we ready to vote? Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon? Yes, 5 yeas, no nays, the motion passes. Agenda D4, resolution supporting Senate Bill 2180 entitled, an act relating to waters and navigation, inspection of dams and reservoirs, environmental study of Johnson's Pond. This bill provides a dedicated grant of funding to DEM specifically to commission an environmental study for the public benefit. Reference pages 59. May I have a motion to approve the resolution? Thank you. May I have a second? Thank you. Mr. Barr, any comments? Mr. Marchand?
President Dixon, might we just have Mr. Brewer and Mr. Marchand kind of give a summary so the public watching or listening understands what this means?
You certainly can. Mr. Gar, would you please give a summary of this resolution?
Is this the resolution for the legislation?
Yes. Which we did discuss in another meeting of the council. So this is on page 59 in the
Right,
packet.
yes, I understand. It's an endorsement by the council of the legislation that was submitted by Senator Raptakis.
Is your mic on? Thank you. It was submitted early this session, which is sometime shortly after January 3rd or 4th. And it's an endorsed, the legislation would fund the request by DEM to study Johnson's Pond for habitat recreation, for which the DEM would have jurisdiction under the Freshwater Wetlands Act, which is exactly what the council requested. So when bills are presented to the General Assembly, if it's a local bill, which this is, it's always protocol to have an endorsement from the legislative body that asks that it be passed, in this case, the Coventry Town Council. So that's why it's on the agenda. It is just for what it's worth, the funding that we're requesting is exactly what the DEM asked us to request from the General Assembly. So this is a good way to determine some of the functions and values, as the DEM puts it, of Johnson's Pond. So that's it.
Thank you very much. Members of the council, oh, it sounds like this is working now. Members of the council, any other questions that you may have about this resolution? Okay, we've had a motion and a second. Mr. Marchand, any comments you'd like to make about this resolution?
No.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready for a vote?
I'm assuming that once we vote,
Mr. LeBlanc.
I'm assuming once we vote, and if it passes, we should probably be giving this to Senator Reptak so that he has it when he's preparing.
Certainly, we will ask the town clerk to send a copy to him.
Yeah.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. Agenda D5, resolution authorizing the town manager to award a contract for the epoxy pavement markings to Safety Markings, 255 Hancock Avenue, Bridgeport, Connecticut, 06605. This award will be funded through the 2021-2022 Department of Public Works Roads and Bridges Division account number 830, operating budget, contract services. This is your reference pages 60 to 62. The resolution on page 60 has the award amounts for crosswalks, stencils, arrows, stop bar, and bicycle logos. May I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
A second.
Thank you. Mr. McGee, welcome.
Good evening.
We have you on the agenda early this evening.
I was so surprised and thankful. Thank you.
It can't happen every week, but we try.
This is the breakout of the actual costs, so you can see how that's determined based upon the machine cost. So we do not see just the dollars.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As you can see, the contract price for proposal for safety markings, which has been doing our marking for the last several years, comes in well under the price that comes out for K5. And we have a contractor services amount. We have in that account $58,040. So there's plenty of money there to complete that part of the project. I respectfully ask for support so that we can get this done this spring. And then we'll go towards the long lines for the next budget process.
Thank you very much, Mr. McGee. Members of the council, are there any questions for Mr. McGee? Mrs. Shockley.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, you mentioned doing it this year. Is this something we do annually?
Yes.
Or okay.
Portions of this is in this
So
year's
different
budget.
sections of town, different.
Correct. This
Okay.
is for all the handwork is being done this year, and then we'll break up the long lines, the center lines and the edge lines over the next couple of years. By doing an epoxy, we don't have to do it every 5 years now, so we'll have a repeat. We're not spending all that money every year, which they used to do with waterborne paint.
Mhm.
The epoxy paint costs a little bit more, but it lasts 4 and 5 times longer.
And Can I also ask, you said it was a $58,000 budget and we're going to be coming out at about 42,000?
Correct. We have 58,000 left in that line item of the budget.
Okay. And do you know how much it cost last year?
Last year, we didn't do it last year.
Oh, well, there you go. Thank you.
That's why the epoxy. Yep.
Any other questions by members of the council? Okay, roll call vote. Mrs. Shockley,
Yes.
Mrs. Lima,
Yes.
Ms. Ludwig,
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc,
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon, yes, 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you very
Mr.
much.
McGee. The next item is Agenda 6, resolution authorizing the town manager to award bid in the amount of $48 per hour and $2.50 per mile fee, in addition to the hourly rate for bus transportation for recreation programs to Ocean State Transit, 6 Black Plain Road, Exeter, Rhode Island, 02822, reference pages 63 to 68. May I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Ms. Blumenthal, comments, please.
No comments. The price is comparable to last year.
Members of the council, any questions?
Yes. Can I ask if this is locked in only because of the price of gas and how much it has been going
It is
up?
locked in.
Okay,
Absolutely.
let's sign this.
I agree.
Okay. Ms. Ludwig, you have a question?
Is this in the current year budget or is anything out of scope?
No, the registration fees for summer camp pay for the busing directly. So it's not in the line item yet, but we will add it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions by members of the council? Okay, roll call vote. Mrs. Shockley,
Yes.
Mrs. Lima,
Yes.
Ms. Ludwig,
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc,
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon, yes, 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. Thank you very much, Ms. Blumenthal. Agenda item E, a consent agenda for discussion and/or action. E1, discussion and decision on tax freeze appeal of James Cabral, 29 Highland Drive, Coventry, reference pages 68 to 88. Mr. Cabral, please come to the podium. First of all, may I have a motion to uphold the decision of the tax assessor from the town of Coventry?
That's what we motioned for?
Mhm.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Cabral, would you please state your appeal?
Yes, I want to be, like all the taxes that say that I owe. Forgiven, go back to my originally taxed property. And what I was being taxed before this. Needless to say, in April of last year, I saw an astronomical amount of taxes that I had to pay from 2014, 15, all the way through. I talked with Mr. Marchand about this, and he says that it was because I run a business from my house. My appeal is that I don't run a business from my house. I have a name of a business. I'm a self-employed carpenter. When I retired, I kept my licenses and I kept my name, James Jacob Brown Remodeling. I have nobody that ever worked for me. I never advertised. If there was a job to do, I go to the people's houses. The only thing I have are my tools in my truck and I go to work. That's all. I don't have a bid. Nobody comes to my house. I never have discussion. I don't have people working for me. I back to what my original was. These extra taxes are given. I want to go back to where it was. It's just, it's not fair. When you start if you start a business, you have to have a license. You have to have a name of the business. That's it. I can't understand. I've talked with Ben about it, and he says, well, you got, and you also, in 2020, you were going to quit the business. It was going to be dissolved. It's another business. You have to have it to do work in the state of Rhode Island. You have to have licenses. But at no time, I don't
have an office. I sit down in a bedroom and I do my taxes. I do every paperwork that you're supposed to do. I don't feel that I should have to pay all these back taxes. I just want to go back to where it was. I don't make that much money in Social Security. Neither does my wife. But it's a name. You have to have a name to run, to work. You have to have insurance to work. That's all it was. I don't have people working for me. I just want all these back taxes that are owed. I want them forgiven. And I just want to go back and have my senior discount reinstated. It's just, I can't even comprehend how this is fair just because of a name. I don't do business in the house. If you wanted me to do a job for you, I go see you and I work with you at your house. I take my truck and my tools out of my yard and I go there. I don't even advertise. In all the 50 years I worked, I never advertised, not even on my truck. It's word of mouth. That's it. But as far as running a business from my house, it's just a name. I don't run a business in my house. When I think of running a business, I think of having businesses having a parking lot. People come and they sit in their office in a conference room and doing all that. I don't have any of that. It's just a name. I'm just flabbergasted. I don't have that kind of money. Now, this has been going on since last August, and I tried to file the appeal to you folks the way you're supposed to go about it. And it drags on and on and on. And I've gone numerous times to see the procedure on what I'm supposed to do. This last time in November, I went and I talked to Ben. And he said, no, they recognize you as a business. You signed all that paperwork. Well, in the beginning, I didn't know what that was. I thought that was just an extra tax that I was being charged for. But in no way am I running a business where people come into my house. I am a self-employed person from day one. And like I told you, it's just me. I go to work, put my tools in the truck, and that's it. I don't think it's fair that I should have to pay all this back money. In fact, I know there are some that are in the same position I am, and I know some that have been forgiven. That's all I really have to say. I can't say any more than that.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Cabral. We're going to ask Mr. Marchand to talk to us about this appeal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Marchand?
Excuse me. So when within the scope of staff's authority from the tax assessor to the town manager in reviewing this case, we can only look at the ordinance as it's written in the town code. And in the case of Mr. Cabral, the language on the exemption is very clear in that it disqualifies any property that is used for a business purpose. And when the town found that the business was registered to this address as a contractor, the registration numbers attributed to 29 Island Drive, and then the termination of the trade name certificate that the business was closed to this address in 2020. That was the basis for the interpretation that the tax assessor and I both came to, that under the code of ordinances, that property was no longer qualified to receive the tax exemptions or the tax freeze for those years where the business was active in operation. And the ordinance doesn't specify anything about how the business is run, where it's run, when it's run. It's just that the association of the business to the address was how we made that decision. And the ordinance doesn't provide any alternatives from an administrative standpoint to consider. So that is why Mr. Cabral asked to appeal to the town council in this hearing.
Okay, thank you. Members of the council, questions? Mr. LeBlanc?
I have a couple of questions, and I don't know if they're for Mr. Marchand or the solicitor. First question is, what is the total amount that this person owes?
It's in the document.
I want the public to know.
On page 82 of 88, we show the balance of what the taxes they didn't pay because of the exemption, and what they were relieved of is the back taxes we've calculated that they would owe is $7,520.73.
And would there be penalties and interest also owed?
That has not been applied at this time.
What would it be if they were applied?
I don't know, because we haven't started running that clock until after the appeals process is concluded.
Okay. When I look at the original form that was filled out, it looks to me like Shirley Cabral filled this out. I do see James Cabral's name on this form, but it's not in the same handwriting as Shirley's. So when was James Cabral's name added to this application?
On the application, it's noted that he was added to the house in November 4th, 2014.
But his name wasn't on the application at the time that this was filed, correct?
No, correct.
Okay. And the reason I ask that is when I look at the town ordinance, it says that no business property or combination of businesses and residential property owned and occupied by any applicant. So James technically never applied for this senior tax freeze. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess my other question is, when Shirley applied, did anybody go on to the Rhode Island state website to see if any businesses were registered to that address?
That was in 2013. I have no idea.
I just feel like there should have been an internal control where that happened, because it might have been found. The reason why I'm asking these questions is I feel as though either way, whatever happens here, I do feel as though the town is at fault in a little bit here, because James, his name was never on this application. We approved it for Shirley. The technicality here is that I think a deed was changed subsequent to this application in 14. But when the decision was made for the tax freeze, his name was not on this. And on face value, if nobody from the town looked at the state's website to see if any businesses were registered to this address, we granted it. So this is a lot of money to people who are on Social Security only. I don't know what the amount is with penalties and interests because it hasn't been calculated yet. And the town did approve it for this taxpayer when this was originally filed.
One of the things that we can't know, and as part of the ordinance, we would want to be very mindful of, is that people know about the tax freeze. They buy properties here 5 years in advance, anticipating the tax freeze. And we don't want to encourage people to get the tax freeze under false pretenses and then marry someone, move a business in the next year and think they get a free dispensation. I'm not suggesting that's what happened in this case, but to say that what was permissible in 2013 exempts any compliance with the ordinance in the years following isn't good policy, because people will take advantage of it.
Again, James never applied for the senior tax freeze.
But the property was applied for, and it goes to the property.
It goes with the property. I just want to add a comment, because just for future reference, and I think this is part, I don't know with the charter review or what the ordinances we would have to look at. It's this simple. It comes right down. The gentleman needed an address to add for his business. So I'm positive, and he probably can state that. So this is just one of many people that will use their personal residence as an address, because you have to have an address. You can't have a PO box.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of many people that possibly are not really physically doing business like he stated in his residence, but because he is registered when you go into the Secretary of State, that's his address.
This is a technicality at the end of the day.
I think we need to clean up the ordinances. If this changes, I don't think this was the intent of the law. So, but I just wanted to speak my piece on that because I just feel that we might have other people that have business, self-employed, that are not physically doing work in their home, and they would not be able to apply for this. So, but like Ben said, at the time of the application, that was what's in the ordinance. So,
What's in the ordinance is the applicant, and the applicant was Shirley.
but it goes with the property.
Again, you said at the time of the application, James was not on this property.
But I mean, we could split hairs here,
Good.
but it goes with the property. I mean,
Understand.
go ahead.
So the question is, if you only have to be qualifying for the tax freeze in the year that you apply for it, and then you don't have to qualify for the tax freeze the years after, it really undermines the entire purpose for which the tax freeze is intended, to assist people on fixed incomes stay in their homes. And it would allow for just anything goes. And I don't think that's a good course. That's not the intent of the ordinance.
Question, Ms. Ludwig?
So, Mr. Cabral, I do believe what you're saying. Thank you for coming tonight and going through the whole process. I know it sounds long and tedious, and to your wife, thank you for joining. And Mr. Marchand, I understand what it says under the ordinance. I guess my problem is there's good and bad here. We are reviewing all of the tax frozen properties. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. In 2021, we're going through with that fine tooth comb to see, are these people really eligible? But the problem now is, okay, this person has not been eligible based on the exact rule here or ordinance here since 2014. So had we caught this in 2015 through whatever means, or for example, sent a notice out to say you're going to lose this if you don't come in and do XYZ or something to that effect, there also could have been an intervention at some point. So now we have a resident and their family who are being charged since 2014. So I don't know what the answer is. But it sounds like not only, I agree with you, Director Mills, that we need to take a review on the ordinance. However, we also need to take a look at how often we're doing the review, because had this been caught 1 or 2 years later, we wouldn't have a resident here facing a $7,500 major bill.
Just to comment on that, Ms. Ludwig, sorry. Yes, we agree. I mean, if this was done timely, and I mean, as you can imagine, I'm sure you're aware of the turnover that this town has had in various positions. And the tax assessor we've had here, the first year I was here, worked tremendous hours just to get caught up. She didn't even have a deputy at the time. So there's been a lot of cleanup that needs to be done in this town. And the assessor's office is no different due to lack of enough staff. From my personal perspective, I just think it's as simple as looking at the ordinance and possibly rewriting it. Because I do think from my perspective, it's unfair for someone that just uses it to register the business. That's just my opinion.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mrs. Shockley?
Yes. So I had a couple of the same questions as my fellow council members. A, should the town have known? It should have gone on for 6 years. And I work for a state agency. I understand. Also, a sole proprietor who has no employees, who doesn't actually build anything at his home. And I assume that's what you said. Nothing is ever actually done on the property. So I feel as if this is a person who is not taking advantage of the tax freeze. That being said, I do see what Manager Marchand is saying about worrying about in the future, that someone would simply use an address because they can get away with using that address. I would want to be careful about how we reword any ordinances, but I do think on a one-off basis, someone who is still working beyond the tax freeze Let's keep that in mind. I have no idea what people's financial pictures are, but just as an overall, if you're still working 5 years past 65, I do think you need the income. If you don't have employees who are also doing work for you, earning you money, and then you're going to be living on a fixed income after a sole proprietorship, I do not want that person to necessarily face the unintended consequence. But we do need to be careful as we move forward too. We don't want to loosen our tax freeze over time.
So just to add a little bit more to what you said, Ms. Kim, is I think it's simple as if we want this ordinance not to be, and I don't believe this gentleman is abusing the situation, but if we want clarity, we have to write the law with clarity. We have to possibly list industries that would not hinder you from getting the exemption: construction, a plumber, et cetera, because their home base it's not really home, right? It's in their truck. So I think we need some more clarity. But I do believe we're going to have others come forward because of this.
Go ahead, Ms. Mills.
Sorry.
It wasn't you. I couldn't hear you because there was talking in the back of the room. Continue, Ms. Mills.
Me too.
Continue, Ms. Mills.
I just to finish, I think you understand my stance. I don't believe business is being run in his house from what the gentleman said, and just knowing the construction industry. Could he be doing his paperwork there? Yeah, but that's incidental to the actual business. So I just think possibly with this happening, maybe we have a chance to change that ordinance and to clarify it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gorham.
If you read the actual ordinance 217-5 subsection B. Sorry about the button tonight. I keep forgetting. Sorry. If you read the ordinance 217-5 subsection B, I think it gives the council the ability. Well, let me just read it. The key words to me are that you can't run a business from your residence. It says from their residence. They're referring to the people who get this this tax benefit, and it is a benefit. It's a big discount on your taxes, especially as time marches on, as it did in this case. Nonetheless, you have to find that he was running his business from his residence. And you heard testimony tonight, which I think you could make a finding if you wanted to, that he was not, although he stored his truck there, and although he registered with the Contractor Registration Board, which is just a state agency that requires you to have an address. It's more so that probably you can be served by the agency if there's some allegation of misconduct of your work as a contractor. That's probably why they require the address, so that they know where they can find you if there's a problem. So if you make a finding that he was not running his business from this residence, then he is entitled to the tax freeze throughout the period that is in contest here. So I listened to him. I think you could absolutely make a finding that he would, although he parks his truck there, his testimony was he doesn't do anything inside the house. He stores all of his equipment in the truck, and all the work he does is at other people's residences. Now, that unimpeached testimony would certainly provide an adequate basis for the council to find that he was not running the business from his residence. Without getting into all the other issues, that to me is the core issue here. If you make that finding, then he keeps the tax freeze. I don't think that the ordinance necessarily needs rewriting. As long as you give fair consideration to that one critical point, was he really running the business from his residence? however you come out, I think is what is, I think that's what was intended. You're not supposed to have a shop where you put everything together and then haul it over to someone's house. That's running a business from someone's residence. Here, I don't want to be the judge. There's certainly evidence from which you could find that he was was not running it from his residence. I just felt the council was just listening to everyone is a little bit uncomfortable in finding that he should have this heavy burden foisted back upon him after doing something that was arguably, not what was intended. To me, the intent is right there from the residents.
So, Mr. Gorham, would you consider, for example, if you're taking telephone calls or you're lining up jobs, et cetera, would that be considered part of running a business?
It's all part of the consideration. Here's the thing. A lot of people don't have phones in their home anymore. They have cell phones. If he's standing in his yard and he takes a call, that's a quantitative thing, really. Mm-hmm. How much does it take before it's from your residence? It's a quantitative analysis. How much did he really do?
I'm listening to Mr. Hart.
Yeah, how much did he really do from his residence? He didn't betray anything about it when he was talking. Nobody cross-examined him or anything. And, he's a taxpayer. He gave his side of the story, and I think you can make a decision based on it if you want.
Thank you, Mr. Gorham. Ms. Ludwig.
So I believe Mr. Cabral's testimony tonight, and I'd like to make a motion to amend the original motion or an amendment motion, whatever I need to do.
No,
Actually, what you can do is just vote it down.
Vote it down. Because it was, the motion was to uphold the appeal.
But will that also not only cancel the 7,500, but put him back on the original tax freeze?
He hasn't been taken off the tax freeze. It's just for those years where it was deemed that he wasn't eligible, he would have to pay those taxes. But the tax freeze is still fixed based on the original application going forward.
Okay.
So to vote down the appeal, to vote not to uphold the appeal means he would be relieved of the back taxes and everything would continue on.
President Dixon, before we,
Mrs. Lima.
Before we go to a vote, I think there's a larger conversation clearly that needs to be had, because it sounds like from what Ms. Mills is saying that this isn't the first and it isn't the last. So we're going to keep having this conversation over and over again. I don't know what the cases are for whatever may come next, but yeah. All right, go ahead.
So this is the second tax appeal that's been heard since I've been here.
Yes.
And based on the council's rulings, I'm using that as my judicial precedent for how I'm going to handle these types of cases in the future. And therefore, if it's a similar case with the same exact conditions, then I'm going to kind of follow the council's lead and not bring them back before the council to have this hearing, because I already know kind of what the policy intent is. And as I'm getting to know this community and the history and the tax laws and the traditions, that's going to help this happen less frequently. But it is also a priority for me to review this particular part of the town code and come up with recommendations for amendment.
Okay. And my other thought that I just had was, I know the statute of limitations is 7 years, and a lot of money can accrue in that time frame. So I don't know if that's part of the conversation, but again, to echo some other sentiments too. It's just if there's any way that we can adjust the ordinance to put more accountability on the town to do this more timely. I understand we've had so much turnover, but that would stop such sticker shock from being sent to people's homes. So,
Thank you, Mrs. Lima. I agree with Ms. Mills that we need to look at the ordinance, but we can't make the decision based on what we're going to do in the future. It's what is the here and now, what is the case before us right now. And I don't support the idea that, we know what the intent of the ordinance is. We need to tighten the ordinance so that we don't have these gray areas continuing on in the future. So If you, any other questions, comments?
I just disagree with that notion. I don't think that there are places where there's an ordinance and policy is meant to be specific, but then there are times when it's written loosely on purpose. So I think there's a delicate balance of over and under legislating. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. And I guess I'm in favor of making sure that the ordinance is clear, especially when it has to do with financial matters. So when we're making decisions on someone's financial obligations or responsibilities, I like to see it as clear as possible so that we don't face voters who say, well, you made a favorable decision for this person, but not for this person. So I'd like it to be as clear as possible, especially having to do with finances. Okay, are we ready for a vote? Okay, so
just to clarify, so
Yes.
an approval vote means you stay with the $7,500.
Upholding the decision of the tax assessor.
And
Yes.
a reject vote nullifies it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, you all set? All right. Okay, the motion is to uphold the decision. Mrs. Shockley,
Reject.
Mrs. Lima,
No.
Ms. Ludwig,
Reject.
okay, Mr. LeBlanc,
Reject.
okay, Mrs. Dixon, reject. Okay. The motion does not pass. 0 yeas, no nays. 0 yeas, 5 nays. Thank you. Okay, so good night, Mr. LeBlanc, Corporal. Please feel free to stay. We have a very interesting meeting coming up. Okay. Okay, the next agenda item is F1 President Update. This is a brief update just to inform the public and to inform members of the council about discussions that the town of Coventry has been having with the Coventry Public Schools. There has been ongoing discussions between the finance department of the Coventry Public Schools and the town of Coventry, which included council members and me as president. I stepped in starting December 13th, 2021, following email exchanges in order to facilitate discussions to resolve the issues. This summary report that I'm presenting this evening reports the issues in the resolution for the following issues: monthly reports, method of accounting fund balance, cell tower money, and due to from accounts. So the first one is monthly reports. The council has asked for the Coventry Public Schools, which I will refer to as CPS. We've asked for monthly financial reports that provide information in a format that is similar to that provided by the Town of Coventry Finance Department to the council. The CPS did provide a monthly report, thank you, but it does not provide the requested comparative data. And I expect that this will be worked out between the finance directors of the two agencies, both the Town of Coventry and the school department. Okay, so thank you. The second issue is the accounting for fund balance. The council noticed that the CPS reported fund balance as revenue. The council has requested that fund balance be recorded on the finance report, not as revenue, but as an item on the monthly report. This has been done. So thank you very much for that reporting. The third issue is cell tower money. The CPS requested the continuation of cell tower money in the amount of approximately $70,000. That is the amount that the town receives from the leasing company. When the town manager and finance director came on board in spring 2021, the team requested documentation for the agreement regarding the cell tower money. Neither side could provide any written documentation. There is, however, a history of this money being provided to the CPS until the year 2021. The CPS has listed cell tower money as other income, which it is not as the money goes directly to the town. The town has recommended that the cell tower money be included in the CPS's appropriation request, will become part of maintenance of effort. The town will also include the 2021 appropriation that was not made. So we will backfill what we did not pay. I expect that this detail will be worked out between the two finance directors. And the third issue is due to from money. And this is a little bit more complex to understand, but I'm going to just use a simple example. If I were to receive a check for $100 and had no bank account, I might ask Ms. Ludwig to hold this money for me and to deposit the money. I won't give you more than that, but $100. Then when I needed some of the money, I would ask Ms. Ludwig to cut me a check for example, $50. That means that both I and Ms. Ludwig would make a record of how much I had on account and how much she had paid me. So if I had asked for $50, then that means $50 would come out of the $100 that I had put in the account. And that means that what remained was $50, and that is considered what is still due me because you only gave me 50 of the 100 I gave you. So that's sort of in a simple way, I believe, explains due to from money. So up until June 30th, 2020, the CPS did not have its own bank account for the receipt of money, such as state aid. The money was received by the town, recorded as revenue in the town's account, and as the schools requested money to pay its expenses, this money was transferred to the CPS. The CPS maintains that the town owes its money that was not requested. The town has asked for documentation concerning the history of this due to from money. The council is in agreement that whatever is owed the school should be paid by the town. If it owes money, we should pay the money. The town finance department has agreed to accept the 2020 audit data and proceed with the 2021 audit. Meanwhile, the town will continue its research to validate all data. At the end of the audit for 2021, the town and the school will sit together to review the data and determine what is due to the school from the town. Based on these discussions, which have taken place over a few months and have involved many members, including many members of the council, what I find themes, there is a lack of written documentation for decisions that have been made in the past. Historical anecdotal evidence is lacking also, as many decisions that were made years and even decades ago, and the key players are not present. The council is committed to documenting decisions in open sessions. This is part of our commitment to transparency in government, and that is why I've presented this report to give you an update of where we are in trying to resolve these 4 financial issues that we have been talking about for several months. We need to make closure. We need to come to a commitment and agreement that we want to solve our problems, and we want to do it in a very efficient way. So I'm very happy to say that based on the cooperation between the finance department of the schools and the finance department of the town, we are working to resolution. We've made great strides in resolving some of these issues. We're going to be working on commitment to resolving the rest of these issues in a very timely basis. Any questions by members of the council?
Okay. Do we have a timeline as far as when we are going to determine what is, if anything, owed to the school?
There's going to be a 2021 audit, the audit of the 2021 fiscal year. And as soon as that is done, then we will sit down and determine what that number is.
Upon completion of the 2021 audit.
Correct. Is that correct, Ms. Mills?
Yes, that would be a fair assessment. Can I have a quick question? You mentioned with the cell tower revenue, so what is deemed that the school department was supposed to receive for this year and last year, where the town is going to be paying them that piece? Is that correct assumption?
It's going to be part of the appropriation. Yes. Aren't we going to backfill the year that we did not pay?
So yeah, that's my question.
Yes.
So are we going to, is the town council going to do it in a resolution, because we are supposed to pay only what the appropriation is, and it's not in the appropriation. So would it be okay if I drop a resolution for that? Is that okay?
For the previous year?
For whatever is owed for that cell tower?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am.
That would be a good documentation for it. Thank you. And is the amount correct? 70,000? Okay.
I would have to go back and look at the school budget.
So in the resolution, put in the appropriate amount.
So what would be fair is to look at for, if it's for 2 years that you're saying, then we would do a separate resolution for each year. So we'd have a nice audit trail. How's that? Does that sound all right?
Based on your recommendation, that would be excellent.
Okay. And I'll confer with Harold.
Excellent.
Sands.
I was just gonna say, President Dixon, if we can have that number agreed to and confirmed by the school before it gets to us, that'd be
Absolutely.
a nice CYA. Okay.
That's
Absolutely.
exactly what I want to talk to Harold Sands. Thank you.
Ms. Ledwick, question? Okay. All right, thank you so much. We're working, as I said before, it's disheartening to find out that we don't have good audit trails, that we don't have good documentation. But as I said before, the council is committed to making sure that the decisions we make are made in a very open, public way, and that we are documenting as many of our decisions or all of our decisions as we proceed along with our business. We can do public comment. May I have a motion to have public comment? We will have it later on in the meeting.
I'll make a motion for public comment.
Okay, any second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone like to make public comment? It can be on the topics we've discussed in the agenda to this point in time or on any subject whatsoever. Mr. Cabral,
I just want to thank you all.
please come to the microphone, state your name and address, please. This is part of our process.
Okay. I'm in agreement to that.
I just want to thank you all very much. This has been a burden on me for a long time, and I thank you also, man. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Any other public comment?
President Dixon.
Mr. Horton, is there anyone on Zoom with us this evening? Okay, would you please raise your hand if you're on Zoom? I can't see the list. No hands raised. Mrs. Lima?
I just want to confirm if we cannot have this replace the last public comment. I'm assuming there's a lot of people who are waiting to see this initial performance audit piece, and I imagine there will be public comment, or I anticipate there will be. So I'm hoping this is just an extra public comment and not replacing.
Yes, we do have public comment right after the presentation on the performance audit.
Thank you.
We will not eliminate that. Thank you. All right, we said that we would begin the Agenda G joint meeting at 8:15, and we're almost at that point. So members of the school committee, would you please like to come forward and take a place? Yes. While this is happening, we'll have like a 2-minute recess.
8:25. I'm just.
So honors. Boy Scout.
Enjoy it.
Oh, sure. Presentation.
I am.
Next door.
Nice to meet you. City Attorney, Town Attorney, nice to meet you. I was in the city, but I know you're a town.
Were you? It's still Monday. No, you keep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was, who was the fellow?
Well, no, wait, it was on. That was.
No idea.
Hi, Mr. Cowett.
Yeah.
And Mr. Devona. How are you, Chris? Good. How you doing?
I was on the Zoom call.
How are you?
I don't usually like certain things on Zoom. I don't mind if the presentations and some other things are really difficult to do that way.
Yeah. So he's gonna go on. There you go. So, yeah.
A little background. Do they typically like presentation all the way through, or are they questionnaires going? Or should I have
Typically, they do questions all the way through.
all the way through?
But you can
I should
change
have
that.
kept it. I should have kept it to
But you
10
can
slides then.
You can change that and say, pick all the questions at the end.
Yeah.
You can change
Okay.
that.
Let's see.
That'll work. How many slides we got?
I'm not sure if we'll get through it if we do 2
How many
minutes.
slides we got?
I don't know, 20.
Oh, that's good. Dude, that's perfect, actually. That's perfect amount of slides.
I could probably get through it in half an hour.
I was like, oh my God.
We were partnering with some of them recently, and they were putting it together, and they had that, and it's like, oh, you can't do that in 45 minutes or a half hour. No,
It's too much, too much. High level.
that's all this one is. Yeah,
High level. But, yeah,
because I was talking about that. I think we're going to, once we get input, finalize, do a final one that will say.
No, it's interesting. Most of what you said is exactly what we do. I think for the budget. Stuff. It's just.
yes. It's getting there. Little steps. Little steps.
That's all you can do.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, is that right?
I know you. And I know it is.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know it's not a lot.
Hello.
If you want to do it, I don't want to say.
She's there.
No. You could have given someone like phone.
Good evening, everyone. We're at Agenda G, joint meeting of the Town Council and the Coventry School Committee with Matrix Consulting Group, who performed a performance audit. Mr. Alan Pennington will present a summary of the report, and a final report will be available in a few weeks. Chairperson Patno, please call to order your school committee, your meeting, and then do a roll call. Excuse me.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to open our school committee meeting. I have 8:18. And I'll just ask for a roll call. I'm present. Mr. Florio?
Present.
Mrs. Colunian?
Present.
Mr. Pearson?
Here.
Mr. Levis?
Here.
Mr. Cowett?
Here.
We're open.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Pennington, happy to see you with us, and thank you for visiting with us this evening in person.
Yes.
That's the first time.
My pleasure.
Yes.
So thank you. So I do have a PowerPoint presentation to go through with you and give you a little background here. Appreciate you having a joint meeting. Throughout the months we've been working with the town and the schools, I want to start by saying we've had a lot of support from staff on both sides of the house. They have been very engaged, providing information, letting us sift through it, answering questions. We've had no resistance, delays, hiding of information. And it's kind of great that I'm following your presentation on the update on the other discussions you've had, because I think one of the things people are going to focus on in this presentation are all the potential changes. And I don't want you to lose sight of a lot of the positive things that have been happening and are going on. But we are going to give you, it's probably about half an hour if I went straight through, but I'll take my lead from you. If you like to ask questions as you go, that's fine. I'll stop. Just interrupt me. If not, I'll go through, give you a quick overview. We wanted to get the preliminary findings in front of you early because we know you're in budget and you're trying to think ahead about things you need to do. But where we're at in the process is we provided this to our steering committee last Monday. They've had a little bit of time to look at it, not much. They are compiling input for us, things they would like us to review, areas if they want us to dig deeper into it, or if they just have questions. We'll take the input, make our final recommendations, and we'll come back as you heard in 2 or 3 weeks with a final report presentation. But we didn't want to delay that till that point so that you didn't have the benefit of some of the input that has come out of this. So if that, we can move to the first slide.
It's on both screens. Okay, great. So if you recall, the RFP that was written had a pretty broad scope. It basically said you can look under any area you want to look at, but there were some key things that we were asked to look at, things like departmental efficiency and effectiveness, staffing, resource management, program effectiveness. If we can move to the next slide. When we made our proposal, we gave you a task plan that said, we're going to sort of look at this in 5 phases, and it'll sort of flow out like this. We did what we call a current state assessment, where that's where we did our on-site interviews. We collected data to understand how the 2 organizations were currently operating. We did an employee survey that was open to everyone in the town and the school organizations to allow them to provide some input. I will give you a quick summary of some of the key findings from that. We then did what we call a best practices and comparative assessment. That's where we compared different functional areas of the 2 organizations to industry standards, industry practices, or prevailing practices. And this allowed us to identify current strengths as well as potential opportunities for improvement that we then could look at and analyze further. We also did some comparative assessments of staffing and budgets with other organizations as one way to say, are you generally in line? Are you out of line? Another data point for us to consider. Task 4 was really our major analytical effort. That's where we looked at saying, what recommendations should we make for operational, staffing, or technological changes? And we're sort of in task 5 now, the reporting. We're at the draft stage, and we'll be moving to the final over the next month. I do want to highlight that the process provided multiple opportunities for different individuals to have input. Some people we interviewed individually to understand their operation, to give them a chance to talk with us. Others we did through the survey. We gave all of you an opportunity, and I think everyone took me up on that advantage, and I talked with you individually. And then we talked with the superintendent, city manager, department heads, executive management, and we made an offer to all union representatives also to have an opportunity to have an individual discussion with us. And as I mentioned, there's been strong support throughout. So with that, we can go to the next slide. I do want to highlight because a couple things. 2 ways organizations deal with a performance audit. Sometimes they just stop once it's started and they wait for the report to come out, and others continue to improve. So there are going to be some things we highlight for you that are already in progress because your 2 organizations did not wait for this to be completed before they did things they knew they needed to do. And I think that's important. And just a few things I want to highlight. Personnel policy updating has been ongoing, and I think that's scheduled to come before the town council in a week or 2 for review potentially. Implementing additional financial policies, development of a town strategic plan. You've been moving those things forward. Similarly, on the school side, they've addressed some issues that they have, or they've enhanced things. They have fully staffed their business office by hiring a CPA to shore up, the resources they needed internally. They have this ongoing project of a curriculum selection process, and I can't do it justice in explaining it all, but it's really going to help them align with state requirements and provide a much more defensible approach to that. And internally, they have a really strong focus on special education and meeting student needs, but also looking at most cost-effective ways of doing that. So I want to highlight that both organizations have continued to improve, continue to look at things as they're moving forward. Not to say over the last 3 or 4 months there haven't been a lot of difficult times also, but those are going to happen and you're going to move forward. Next slide. So I have about 3 or 4 slides. I won't go through all of these in detail, but I wanted to just put in context some of the things that we heard from the employees. And in the report, there's much more detail. You can see by statement, the agreement level or disagreement level for town responses and school responses. You can also do a comparison by the department that the employees are in, so you can see if different departments or units have different perceptions. But I wanted to highlight just a few things here that there were some real areas of agreement. So on the town side, you can see this list of things where the majority of the staff were in agreement that these were present in your organization. Internally, good teamwork. They felt empowered to make decisions in their area of responsibility, that their department provides a high level of service. Customers are satisfied with the service levels provided. High quality work is a priority. The department, individual departments put a high priority on cost effectiveness. Supervisors coach or mentor them, and high performance expectations are in place. So that's good. Now, it's not to say that we always achieve those, but it's good that employees are feeling supported, empowered, and a teamwork environment. If we go to the next slide, similarly on the school side, we have some issues that are similar here. Good teamwork, empowerment. I'm kept informed of what's occurring in the organization. Coventry Public Schools is a good place to work. I can make a career with the organization. We provide a high level of service. Customers are satisfied with our service, and high quality work is a priority. So you see some similarities, but there's also a few differences related to the work environment. On the next slide, that might be a duplicate. Go to the next slide. I should have, yeah. Okay. So then I looked at the areas of disagreement, and I was focusing initially, I wanted to highlight for you those areas where 40% or more disagreed with the statement, because those sort of give you an indication if that many people in your organization are disagreeing, there might be a potential issue. So we heard things where employees don't have the resources and equipment they need to effectively perform their job. They have an inability to electronically complete internal processes, so a technology issue. Not feeling kept informed of what's occurring within the organization, that they don't feel they're all working towards the same strategic goals. 46% felt the town is not a good place to work. 68% said staffing levels don't promote efficient operations, and facilities are inadequate to function at a high level. So it starts to, you're getting some technology, some resource equipment, and facility issues coming out here also, and lack of strategic goals, which you're starting to address. On the school side, those with 40% disagreement included resourcing and equipment, staffing levels sufficient to promote efficient operations, and facilities. So probably no surprise from anyone on the facility side. You've been talking about that on both sides quite a bit. We can go to the next slide. I'm going to move now into recommendations, and I have regrouped these from the draft report for ease of presentation to you. So I'm going to start with those that I think apply to both organizations jointly. Then I'll go through the town ones and then the school ones. So this first one, you've sort of taken the first steps towards today, and I think you can expand upon that. We're suggesting that you develop a joint agreement between the town and the schools about how you're going to handle finances, the budgeting process, and reporting. There's a lot of energy's been put into trying to get to where you're at now. And I think that effort, as painful as it may have been, may help you move forward easier here. But there shouldn't be any disagreement about what type of information should be provided to the town council from the schools. That's part of the budget making and decision making process, in alignment with the regulation of once it's approved and authorized in the town, the school committee is the one responsible for administering and spending the funds. So we do talk in the report about ways to enhance that. We are recommending both organizations develop a much longer term CIP and a more comprehensive CIP. One of the things you'll see a theme emerging here, that there are some basic, what I'm going to call foundational elements that the organization, especially on the town side, is lacking. And you've already started working on those updated personnel rules, a long range financial plan, CIP, comprehensive planning, facilities, work maintenance. These things prevent you from having the data and the tools for those of you sitting up here to make effective policy decisions. And that's what you need the organization to provide you. The information and background, you set the policy and they carry it out. So we're saying both organizations need to do better at looking at these long-term capital needs. You may not like the information it provides to you because those numbers may be huge, but how can you develop a plan to move forward if you don't know what you have to be addressing? You can't do it one-off. You can't replace a vehicle because it's an emergency repair and not know where it fits into the entire fleet and whether you're putting the money in the right place, or that next year you have 10 vehicles that need to be replaced because you haven't been putting sufficient funds in. You need to have that long-range vision. We are saying longer term, There's some opportunities for joint school-town efforts, and we're going to talk about those at the end also. But 2 in the report had to do with facility maintenance, operations, and custodial services. If you put some of the foundational elements in place, those are a couple areas where we've seen organizations have long-term success, because both organizations need to maintain their facilities. They need to have custodial services. There's a lot of joint opportunities there for cost effectiveness and efficiency. It's not the highest priority one, but you have a lot of other things to do first. And both should monitor and report on employee turnover rates so that they can develop a plan and strategies to improve employee retention. This probably is right now impacting the town more so than the schools, but it needs to be done routinely anyways. I think everyone's aware. There are some departments that have had some pretty significant turnover. Police, as I understand, being one of them. And it's not necessarily that there's something necessarily wrong, but unless you analyze and figure out why. Is it salary? Is it personnel policies? Is it something else? You can't address that. And you can't, if you have turnover that exceeds the industry standard, you can't really perform efficiently or effectively because you don't have all your resources there. So that's why we feel it's important. On the technology side, I'm going to give you a kudos. Both the town and the schools are using the same financial system. That's good. You need to maintain that. That is a really important thing for the 2 organizations. Unfortunately, the current system doesn't seem to be meeting the needs of either organization fully. So all we're recommending in the report is you really have to have a joint effort at fixing that, either putting the resources into fixing it or replacing it with something that both sides can live with. But you don't, I'm just going to encourage you really strongly, don't deviate and say, town get a system that works for you and schools get a system that works for you. It's going to introduce a lot more problems. You want to stay on one system. Similarly, we're going to talk a little bit about in the report, asset management and maintenance management. You should be able to better manage your assets, knowing the age of them, the condition, what needs to be replaced in the future, tracking work orders and monitoring your performance on those. It's a great opportunity for the town and the schools to jointly purchase the software because it can work for both. You can reduce your cost in half for each organization. Both using it, it just provides a lot of opportunities. So again, these are the type of things where collaboratively, both organizations can be better at a cheaper cost than doing it alone. We could move to the next one. I'm going to move to the town area. So I've broken these into categories. So the first one are sort of operational reviews, operational issues. And the first one is just continue working on the strategic plan. I know it's difficult, especially if you haven't done one in the past, to get them in place. But once you do, it should become foundational. We talk about linking other things to that moving forward. So it's something you should review annually and update as needed. We have recommended annual work plans for each town department, which says, and you can link this to the budget and you can link it to the strategic plan. And this is where they're telling you, if you adopt this budget, here's what we're going to do with it in terms of our annual work plan. You know, in public works, that could be the miles of street to be paved, you know, the amount of sweeping or inlet cleaning or equipment purchases, whatever it might be. But here's the work plan we're going to produce with that money you gave us. And that should be tied into the strategic plan. And then it should be part of the annual budget process and part of department heads' evaluation annually in terms of, are you working towards that plan? We have recommended, and this will be a longer term one, developing performance metrics for each department. Again, so you can report out to the public what you're doing, how quickly you're doing it, how much you're doing. You don't have the data in most areas to do this now, so it needs to be a longer term one. And I think if you look at priorities, there are more critical things to address first. We talk about expanding the budget process to link all these things together. Continue the development and updating of financial policies. That's a critical foundational element when your policy manuals, whether it's financial policies, personnel rules are outdated. You can't make good decisions. You can't hold everyone to the appropriate standard. We have, some of these are going to be much smaller and minor, but I tried to hit all the major ones in there. In the town clerk's office, we suggested adopting a one-day target for entry of land records and focus on completing electronic scanning and filing of land and vital records. Finalize the updated personnel manual, as I mentioned. We can go to the next one. Enhancing long-range planning efforts. That's sort of a gap we identified in the planning department, that there isn't enough long-range planning for what you want Coventry to be in the future. And you can't control who you're going to be in the future if you don't have someone dedicated to focusing on that. And then we've talked about implementation of sewer maintenance division and developing a strong preventive maintenance program for the sewers. You can move to the next one. Thank you. There's now going to be a big group of technology issues. Technology is not your strength right now in the organization. And this is going to hamper some of these other things until you address it. So really the first thing needs to be developing an IT strategic plan, because you need to know, we've given you several new systems to consider, but you have to time these and figure out how are we going to resource them and implement them, and what's the greatest priority. And they all have a cost to them. So they also have to be funded. But there is a need for a new land record system to replace Avenue, replacing the dog licensing system, hopefully into an existing system that you already have. A need for social work case management, and transitioning planning to an existing system, the OpenGov permitting system. Yes.
Can I just ask, because I was reading this in the plan, and so replacing our dog licensing system, they're like $8 a license, right?
Right, but you have a system called OpenGov, which should be able to handle that. So what we're saying is, we say replace it, but we haven't done like the detailed functionality analysis, but we think you can do it with OpenGov, which is something you already have. So there would be no cost other than setting it up.
So I guess I just wonder, is it for ease for the staff, or to take more revenue? When I saw dog licensing system is one of the things, I was just like, to what end exactly?
Yeah.
So the dog licensing system right now is a self-made program that the predecessor town manager did. And what's that? Oh, the previous IT director. Okay.
Yeah.
So
all we're trying to say is you really need to integrate your systems, because the problem is you have data here, data there. Nothing is integrated. A homegrown system's not the way to go. It's not going to be a huge cost, but you have a platform we think you can use. We already talked about the asset management also, but right there alone, plus we talked about the financial system. That's a lot of funds. And there's a lot of opportunities to streamline, be more efficient and effective for your staff to perform better, but they don't have what they really need. And what they have is really fragmented. The systems aren't talking to each other, or they're not set up appropriately. I mean, the challenges in getting information even out of the financial system is problematic. The ability to automate purchasing, which is pretty fundamental, you don't have the capability to do that. And you really have some potential opportunities to streamline the purchasing process and get better control over your spend. I mean, what do you see? Your total budget's what, 80-some million? I mean, that's a lot of money flowing, even when you take personnel out. So even if you're down to 15 million in supplies and materials and contract, there's still a lot of money that you can control. We can move to the next one. Staffing. I hesitated to show this one because unfortunately, what it shows is you have some unmet needs depending upon the services you want to provide. And I'm just going to run through these quickly and then I'll answer questions later. But an assistant town manager, which we know you have begun the process of recruitment on, budget and finance manager, half-time HR generalist, a clerk in the town clerk's office, restoration of some recreation positions. We're suggesting a reallocation of half-time of the Parks and Rec mechanic to maintenance duties. We're going to talk a little bit more about the mechanics. A long-range planner, code enforcement officer, reduction of one driver in public works, and potential elimination of 2 mechanics. This is one area where we did get feedback from staff, and we're going to walk through our analysis with them in a little bit more detail. So don't get too hung up on that number yet. But our initial assessment showed too many mechanics to the ratio of equipment maintained. But we also talk in the report about some options to bring other stuff more centralized. So the Parks and Recreation mechanic moving to the Public Works facility, fleet facility. We also have the issue of police vehicles that could be maintained or some portion of that maintained with your fleet. There's several options to centralize things. We talked about the custodian in Parks and Rec. I think you can move to the next slide. The custodian from Human Services to Public Works. Those one-off positions really need to be centralized wherever possible. And we have recommended a town engineer that would likely be relatively cost neutral by eliminating a contract that you have. There's a lot of needs there, and we understand you probably can't do that all at once. So part of the report finalization is also getting some input from staff about priorities, timeframes, and then we'll make a recommendation on how you might phase this in. Focusing on the most critical things first, and finding a way to make it feasible for you to accomplish all this if you choose to do so. But I think it's fair to say that while there's been a lot good going on in the town, it hasn't been as coordinated, as professional, or as deliberative and data-driven as you probably want it to be, or as it should be. And while you've made some progress, it's going to take some time to get there. When we move to the schools, we talk a little bit, again, back to the budget process, because that, there was a lot of discussion about budget during this. And I think we wanted to hit this again to say, bring people in earlier into their budget process, different stakeholders, whether that's the town council, that's the public, make sure there's meaningful opportunities for input and understanding, and then the policies can be made. We're suggesting they have input into the new financial policies under development in the town, those that would be applicable to them, because they're going to have to comply with them. So rather than forcing it on them, have their input early so you can have something that works for both sides. And goes along well, I think, with what you were talking about earlier in terms of addressing the issues you've had in the past. The turnover in the organizations have been significant and has really hampered institutional knowledge and understanding and has caused a lot of issues that you've had to overcome. We have suggested uniquely here on the school side to do a salary survey to get some additional information about positions. It's really to look at answering some of the questions about are we paying more than others at a level beyond what we could do, but really to position for future contract discussions if appropriate, but also to put to rest the question of, are they just throwing money out the window? We didn't identify that as an issue, but we know that's a big issue. You're always better to have extra data with which to negotiate or set your policies and educate the public. Expanding the review of low enrollment classes. We're not saying they're not doing it. We're saying do more of this and focus on reducing those that could be consolidated or eliminated while still maintaining compliance with mandatory requirements. Implementing a grant application process internally under the assistant superintendent, relatively minor minutia in the weeds, but we think there's an opportunity to streamline that and put the work where it more appropriately belongs, and provide a better opportunity for the schools. And implementing facility condition assessments on a 5-year cycle. We specifically recommended this on the schools versus the town just due to the number of facilities. It's a much larger dollar impact that you're going to get hit with. And you really have to know what you're doing in order to figure out where to put those funds. Even if it's the limited funds you have from the 3% you're supposed to be allocating annually, you need to direct them where they're going to have the greatest impact. We could go to the next one. Interestingly, on the school side, initially, we've only recommended 3 facility maintenance workers. So there's a disparity. If you look, there's a disparity in the 2 sides in terms of immediate staffing needs. I can't tell you why, but we felt there was a greater staffing need on the town side at this point than on the school side. Maybe they've been able to address their more critical needs, or they're concentrated in fewer areas. You remember, one of the differences between the 2 organizations is the town has a lot more different functional areas that they're focused on. The schools, I'm not to say the schools aren't complex, but it's education, and then you have your admin side. You have a lot of state regulations, federal regs to comply with, but the town is dealing with police, Parks and Rec, Public Works, admin functions, planning, permitting, just a whole host of things that require specialized skills. And you can't really move somebody from one department to another to fill a gap. So I think you've held the line really well over the history in terms of keeping staff levels low, but I don't think you can do that moving forward if you want the services that we're hearing you say you want, or the level of service you say you want. Yes.
Yeah. So on the town side, you not only gave a number of positions that you thought we should fill, you gave a few positions that you thought we should eliminate.
Potentially, yes.
So on the school side,
we have not
you don't have any.
We have not recommended any eliminations at this point. No, that is correct. Next slide. Technology. Actually, I think on the school side, they're probably, other than the financial side, ahead of the town in terms of, if you look at a spectrum, they're further on the spectrum for better use of technology. But there's a few areas we have recommended in the report to look at expanding the use of Aspen if possible for some special education documentation, training, and IEP management or reporting. If they can't use that system, they may need something else. But our focus is always use an existing one first if you can before you buy something, because any software you buy is quite expensive. And review the management of the MTSS data within either an existing system or we're procuring a new one. So they've, not to say that they have a gold standard technology program, because they don't, but they do have, their technology seems to be meeting their needs better than what the town's is doing at this point. I think I don't remember saying it when we were talking about staffing in it. I may have overlooked it in putting the summary together, but we do recommend some additional increase in IT staffing for the town also. So in the report. We can move to the next slide. If I didn't say that, he wasn't going to move the slide forward. So I want to end on a future opportunity. So I know I went through that relatively quickly. There's a lot in there, and that is more than your staff can handle, which is why some of the critical positions we recommended internally for the town, the assistant town manager, the budget and finance manager, whatever you want to call these positions, there's a need for more strategic managerial focus, special project focus that you don't have the capacity to do now. And you can't move those other projects forward without resources to do it. So I want to highlight, I know when we walked in and said, it's going to be tough. The two organizations don't work together. I tell you, they worked really well with us. I do not feel anyone was holding anything back. They probably don't agree with every recommendation either, and probably won't when we finalize, even after input. But to date, I have no input yet from either the town or the school side. So I don't know what their comments are going to be or what additional areas we may look at to address those. But I think the relationship has the potential to go to a much healthier one and a much more collaborative one. And I just want to throw these out there. These are much longer term range, but where we've seen the greatest success is in equipment sharing, fleet management and maintenance, custodial service, facilities maintenance, IT support, purchasing, and some select HR things like some training and maybe some benefit programs that can be mutually managed for both organizations. All of those areas are ones where if you get your foundation and your fundamentals in place, you actually have the opportunity to have some pretty significant cost savings looking at these in the future. This is going to be longer term down the road, but you don't need to duplicate everything. And I know just in the time we've been working with you, we've heard a lot of things. Well, the school has this energy policy in place, and then the town was talking about one. I don't know all the details, but I know, but there are a lot of things you could be doing jointly, or we're purchasing this equipment or that, or plowing parking lots or other things. There's a lot of opportunities to share services and leverage what you have. But you have to have that relationship and willingness to work together to find a way to do that. And I think there's a lot of opportunities there. And I want to dangle that out there because I think that's where you're going to get what I think a lot of people were hoping, which is a bucket of money. Unfortunately, I'm bringing you a list of things you need to do that's probably going to take some investment up front, but all of those will pay off longer term. Most of the internal processes in the organization are manual. There's a lot of manual record keeping. That's not the way you're going to manage things 2022 and forward. Not if you want the information that the we got 8 of you up there, need to make policy decisions, which is really, I mean, that's your job. You get to make the tough decisions. And then, but to do that, you need good information. And I don't think you have the information available that you necessarily need to have that holistic view. Longer term, again, some real opportunities there. So that's a quick overview. I'm just going to stop here and answer any questions, comments, concerns. Again, we're at the draft report stage. We'll be gathering input from both organizations over the next week or so. Take a couple of weeks to review that, finalize, and I would anticipate once it's finalized, we'll come back with probably another presentation like this, but they would be very specific, recommendations with timeframes, priorities, and potential cost impacts.
Chairperson Patno, would you like to ask the members of your committee for their questions for Mr. Pennington?
Sure. Thank you, Madam President. I guess we'll start with Mr. Pearson. Any questions or comments? Yep.
Thank you for this presentation. I look forward to the final copy of the audit. Rhode Island general law has recently changed, and the school departments are moving a lot of their management down to buildings. So it's moving from a centralized function, a lot of responsibility, including budgetary, is going down to each school building, led by each school principal. Did you have a chance in your audit to talk to the building-based staff to make sure they have input into this?
Principally, their input would have come through the employee survey. We did not do a lot of department office interviews at that level. No.
Okay. All right. That's the only question I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Mrs. Colonian?
I don't have any questions at this time, but I reserve that later, maybe. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Colonian. Mr. Florio, anything?
I like your summation. As a school committee member, I do like that summation you had. I'm glad we did this. There was a lot of discussion, a lot of controversy about having this done. And I'm glad we did this. I'm glad that we have that we'll be looking at a 5-year plan, a strategic plan. I'm glad we'll be working together on a collaborative basis. I like all your recommendations. And I like the fact that school personnel are very pleased with working for our school system. I didn't know that. I didn't realize how happy they were. And, with COVID and everything else happening, it's nice to see there's little, if any, burnout from our staff. And thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pennington. I commend you for doing a good job. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Trying to tell me something. I don't have many comments or anything yet because I'm going to reserve some comments. I think some feedback probably went your way late today. So I'll be looking forward to the final report. I thank you for the work and for your staff's work. And I'm hopeful that the recommendations can come to fruit. But thank you.
Thank you. Members of the town council, any comments or questions for Mr. Pennington? Mr. LeBlanc.
First, just want to say thank you for your time, for your presentation tonight. Really appreciate it. Couple questions. How in detail did you and your team go when it comes to contracts, union contracts on the teacher side, police side, understanding the costs of those contracts?
We have reviewed both sides. The contracts from both sides. We offered an opportunity for all union presidents to have an interview with us also as a key stakeholder. Some took us up on that, some didn't, but we got some good input from those that did. We didn't go to the extent of, for example, costing out like the entire labor agreement, but we did do a scan of it of things that are typical or not typical. And if that's an area where a specific section, not to read your mind, but if you're saying some more specific recommendations or narrative in the report about what that assessment was, would be happy to do that.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, I don't recall off the top of my head anything that was glaring or would have probably driven another recommendation. We do talk about, especially on the school side, looking for some opportunities on future ones to increase flexibility in some managerial decision making. That's quite vague, but there are potentially some opportunities there. And if we need to spell that out a little bit more, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay. And then when it comes to the town's debt, I don't think I saw a recommendation of maybe refinancing the town debt to try to save some money. Was any analysis done on that?
Not specifically on the town debt. We did look at the overall budgets to understand your current situation, both in terms of revenues, your current debt levels. I listened to a lot of your meetings in Zoom, listening to you talk through the school bond issue and the difficult decisions you had to face there. But again, if that's something you'd like us to weigh in specifically on in terms of whether it's, with the caveat, we're not CPAs, we're not bond counsel, but if you wanted us to weigh in on the comparative level with other comparable communities, we could do that. And potentially, the opportunity to refinance. It always makes sense to refinance if you can get a lower rate, to save funds, because that's money you're generating that you can put to other things. That should be something you routinely are assessing.
Understood. Totally agree. I just didn't know if I would see anything in the final write-up. That's all. Because a lot of the recommendations are going to cost us money, and I was trying to offset said costs.
I understand.
And then my last question, has any town ever hired you to come in to do a performance audit and then maybe 2 to 5 years down the road asked you to come back and do a review of your suggestions and how the town has performed?
We've had a few clients do that. So we did a study for Toho Water Authority where we were helping them revamp some procedures. It was directed at the board. Let's say they had a board. Well, it didn't matter. They had a board who directed the study. 2 years later, they had us come in to do an assessment. How much was implemented? Why wasn't it implemented? And how did they need to recalibrate? I would suggest, we're going to talk about this in the final report presentation, but a typical approach once we make the final report and the bodies accept it or do whatever they want is to say, all right, now we have to develop an implementation plan. We have the consultant's recommendations, but we have to adopt what are we going to try to work for? And then you should have a regular reporting out, whether it's quarterly, twice a year, annual, that says what is our progress towards that. And we typically stay in touch with our clients after the fact. If somebody says, all right, I'm ready to start implementing X and we ran into a problem and we run into that, we encourage them to call us. We'll share that information. But if you want an in-depth review, yes, we have done that. I will say it's more limited. I would say maybe 5% of clients actually do that officially. But I think most have some process where they're measuring progress, or sometimes something will come up. You say, all right, maybe we want to implement an asset management system, but we don't have the capacity to do a functionality analysis and determine, write the RFP or make the selection. Those are different areas where they may seek outside help or assistance. But
makes sense. I appreciate it. Thank you. Sure. I will have more questions on your final. Thanks.
Other questions? Mrs. Lima.
Thank you. Thanks for this preliminary presentation. You made an interesting comment I wanted to build off of. You had said, and I think it's appropriate, that I think when these are done, people expect buckets of money to appear. And this report shows the exact opposite of what I think the public in Coventry expected to see. So my question is just, when you produce the final report, what exactly will the build out of the explanation for each of these recommendations look like? Is it just based on input? Is it based on third-party benchmarking? I think people will be curious to see the backup behind it.
Help me understand your question before I respond. When you say to back up to the recommendation, beyond the narrative we've provided in the report, or are you talking about the cost implication?
I think people are going to want to see, is this just based on input from your interviews with folks in the town, or is it based on XYZ town similar to you do this? And like, that's, I guess, what is that going to look like?
So like one of the attachments to the current draft is a best practices assessment. That's where we went through and identified current strengths, some potential opportunities. If you weren't meeting that best practice, we analyzed it, and that's how we developed a recommendation. And if you look in there, in many of them, there is the background already that says, whether it's on the staffing requirements, like how we arrived at that staffing recommendation, or what functions would be performed by that. In terms of like an asset management system, let me use a technology one as an example. That is based upon best practices. You cannot effectively manage all of your infrastructure. And when we talk asset management, that's facilities, that's the pipes in the ground, that's everything that you need to maintain. You should have a complete inventory. You should know the condition. You should know the replacement cycles, and you tag the maintenance requirements to that. Those maintenance requirements then become the daily work that you send your staff out to perform. So you have then the data coming in to say, we're supposed to be replacing 10% of or resurfacing 10% of our streets annually. We're only doing 5%. Our deficit is getting larger. It's going to hit us at some point because you can only defer this maintenance so long. Same thing with, I think we talk about doing, as part of the CIP, a more comprehensive vehicle replacement cycle, because there's real opportunities for replacing vehicles at the appropriate time. You avoid a lot of maintenance costs. You can actually save a lot of money by replacing them more frequently if you do it appropriately timed. So yes, if there's particular areas where you feel, hey, I don't think there's enough in there for me to really understand how you got there, please send that along and we'll make sure we give you everything we can. We will be supplementing some of it. We have best practices. We have, there's a lot of issues out there, and there are some minor ones we haven't weighed in on. We're like, doesn't even matter. They got bigger issues to deal with first. And we're trying to make sure we give you a plan that is implementable, that it's not just overwhelming, that you can't make the progress you need to. So, but yeah, we'll try to give you everything you can to help educate the public and make that case.
And if it's possible, if I could just connect with you after, I never did get the opportunity to provide input. So I'd love to set up a time if it's not too late to be able to do so.
If you don't have my email, I'll send it to you.
Thanks.
Okay, other comments? Mrs. Shockley.
Thank you. I think I'm coming from the same vein as my fellow council members, just in that, in starting to look at the report, and full disclosure, I haven't looked at the whole thing yet.
Sure.
As I'm going through it, I was trying to kind of look at, okay, this is a additional cost. This looks like it could be a cost savings. This looks like it's relatively cost neutral. So if we could look at the recommendations kind of in that way, maybe we'd be more likely to do some heavier lifting on something that might be a cost savings, so we can get to those next items that could be worked on. Also, people think of additional costs as more money over time, but in some cases that's not necessarily true. So just taking IT, for instance, if we're doing less manually, even if we need these extra employees, could there be less overtime? Are there ways that we're saving money, leading to a better transition as new people may come in, making sure that all the information, finding data has been an issue that we've had in this past year that has been a huge hassle. It's been man hours.
Right.
It's been a cause of contention that we really didn't need. So you just take things like that, and I might be asking for more than this is supposed to give, but I figure I'll ask and I'll make you say no. So if possible, that we could just kind of see how we could best utilize our time immediately so that we can make it so that these different things that maybe cost a cost negative for the town, I guess you'd say.
So for each recommendation, we will have a column in the executive summary that has a cost to implement or a cost savings associated with it. We'll also have a priority and a suggested time frame, because then we can sort those for you and you can say, all right, here's a rough immediate implementation plan. that's not feasible. We can stretch this out. They recommended 4, maybe we have to do 5 or 6 years. But yes, we'll give you some more of that. And I think you hit a good point, and I think I mentioned it, but let me mention it here. The purpose of the technology investments, and they do have a cost, but the efficiency gains that I think most everyone I talked with, whether it's people sitting up here or department heads and staff that they want to see, they don't have the tools to get there. There's so many manual processes or things that just aren't tracked that they don't have the data to make decisions, to give you answers. They can't automate processes that allow your staff then to perform more work for the same number of staff, because they just don't have that available to them. So there has to be some initial investment to get to those future efficiencies that you want. It also means there needs to be accountability, that if we're going to invest this money, we're going to effectively implement it, we're going to use it, and we're going to use the data that comes out of it. I mean, I think that's the expectation. You're not just throwing money at technology and then nobody's using it appropriately. Everyone should be held accountable to that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Ludwig, do you have questions?
I don't have any questions right now. I think most of mine were covered by some of the other counselors.
Okay.
I did read through the presentation, and admittedly, I was one of the shocked residents that didn't see like inefficient. So I'm just wondering if, how do we plan on kind of showing this to residents? Do we have a preliminary draft here? Do we want to wait for the final result, or any thoughts on how we get the public to kind of see this with us?
I think we definitely need to wait for the final draft to have something to work with. From there, it would be a matter of just staff capacity and time, which is the issue that's been highlighted, of turning that into a communications piece, a public education piece. I do think that the final report is going to be too much for the average resident to want to sit down, read, and digest. So how we're going to kind of pair this up with the town's strategic plan, on the other hand, is very bullet point, 2 pages. Anyone can get through that. And so we're going to want to make a corollary, just 2-page summary that highlights our goals and what we're tackling and how they line up with the strategic plan. I think there's a lot of messaging out of the strategic plan, out of the performance audit, and our 23 budget for both the school and the town, that all of this is going to converge into something that is really meaningful to the residents that they can get behind. When I got here last year, it was on the heels of 3 failed budget referendums and an absolute imperative that we have to pass this budget. And the biggest question is, why should I vote for it? And the residents and citizens and just people didn't understand what the value is in the proposed budget for services. I think both the town and the school need to do a much better job of making the case of the value they provide. That's one of the things that I think is really great about this summary, is that this performance audit did highlight the successes and strengths of the value the taxpayers are already getting in the town and the school, which have been overlooked. It hasn't even been part of anybody's narrative about what good quality service or what good efficiencies we already have. And so I think Alan made that point at the very beginning of his presentation, that we really need to not lose sight of the strengths that we have, and that when we're making the case to the residents, we're asking them, look, you've got a good thing, and we can make it a lot better. It's going to take an investment, and there's a purpose behind it. We're not just asking for money to throw it away frivolously on contractual raises or whatever, but everything has been looked at, evaluated, deemed appropriate. Otherwise, there would be recommendations to go renegotiate that, refinance that, and change it. But that this is our message. This is how we're going to go. And I think that's really where we need to go with your question with an answer, is to come up with that summary message.
And we might be able to also put a, problem is I put too many columns, you can't read them, but we might be able to do the recommendations in some buckets too. So, so you said it doesn't really say inefficient. It does if you read it in detail. It just doesn't use that word. The issue is there are really inefficient processes. That's why you need the technology. And maybe what would be helpful is if we add a section in the executive summary that talks about the benefit and gains that you might get from these technology and sort of give a narrative. Everything in the back is sort of in the weeds for departments and, school units, they want to focus in on that, but that's a lot for others to digest. Maybe we need to make it easier in that executive summary. Say, look, here's what you're going to get from these technology investments, or here's what gap you're filling by these additional staff. Really bullet point sort of format so that you have more of that narrative there from us to help explain it, so that it doesn't
That would
appear,
be helpful.
So it doesn't appear like anyone's putting their spin on it. Here's what we're saying. So let me think of how we can help develop that as we go forward.
I love columns. I love spreadsheets.
Good.
Send it all. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I have a couple of comments. I can picture that one of the documents in this package is the strategic plan basically lined up in one column, and all of these recommendations are aligned up with these items on the strategic plan, because we have certain buckets, we have certain goals associated with each of these buckets. And we should be able to take these recommendations and align them. If we can't align them, that doesn't mean that they're not worthwhile. Right. It may mean that we've forgotten something in the strategic plan, or it may be that these items that we want to delay for a while. So I think that that would be a potential document. The other thing is that we can't do everything. We may not want to do everything that's recommended. And so on the town side, assess for us the relative importance of staff increases versus the technology improvements that you were recommending. Because on the town side, there are a number of staff position increases that you're recommending. And we have discussed this, and we've also discussed the cost associated with that. But we also have a number of technology improvements, which will cost a lot of money too. Yep. So relative importance of those two items.
We'll put a priority on every one and a timing. So there may be something that's high priority, but we give a 3-year time horizon because other things need to happen first. So for example, let's see if I can pull one out of the hat here. You can't really do the comprehensive CIP until you have some more data. So there's maybe some other things you need to focus on earlier, like the asset management system or some of the other things, so that you can start to develop that. Maybe they run a little in parallel, but we'll look at those things to say, which should you do first? Like, do you need the finance and budget manager before you can finalize all the policies and procedures because of capacity? We'll give our thoughts on that, but you may flip it and you may say, no, I want to get all the policies and procedures done first, and then we'll hire someone. Or you may say, hey, we're going to hire them and they'll help us develop these. We'll give you a recommendation for those, but that's exactly the sort of discussion you need to have we like this, but it's just too much. While we'd like to do it in 3 years, we need to do it in 5 or 6. I think what's most important is whatever plan you implement, make sure it's realistic, because once that document becomes public and you adopt it, or you say we're going to start working on this, once you put a time frame to it, people are going to expect you to hit that target. So I always encourage people, don't be over aggressive. Yes, you may want it faster, but do something that's also achievable, because people are going to, you say you're going to do it in 3 and you do it in 4, everyone thinks you fail. But the thing is, you got it done and you got in place something you really needed to do.
And the other question I have for you is this. Each of these recommendations is like an individual project, which will take time, people, money. And I'm wondering, what in this list of recommendations, maybe it's premature to answer this, but what is low-hanging fruit? Because some of these projects are going to take 1 or 2 years to accomplish, even to see the fruition of what we're trying to get from this particular project as a goal. So what's low hanging fruit in this report? Because I can't figure it out yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of heavy lifting in here.
There is.
I mean, there really is. There are some major efforts. Technology is a major effort. I mean, so clearly you're not going to do with existing resources. That's not going to happen. You're either going to contract it out to get somebody to help you, or you're not going to hit the timeframes. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, each of those systems require somebody to document in detail the functionalities you want, the procedures you want to implement, write an RFP, do the interviews, test the systems, make a selection, and then you have to implement it. And implementations never go as easy as they tell you they're going to go. I've done enough of those to know, the IT people, no offense to anyone who's listening, but they can promise a lot. Their salespeople are really good. It always takes much longer to implement, and it's a little bumpier. So just plan for that. But having the resources internally to devote to that is critical also. And if you have an area, some of these systems are asset management, getting planning on OpenGov, the case management system. There's a lot of different areas. If there are not people in that department that are really comfortable running that, you need to find the person who is. Let them be the technical expert, but find the right person to implement those for you, so that you can be successful. I mean, not everyone goes through a software implementation, and you can't expect every director to be able to be 100% on that. So I just caution that. I mean, because there's nothing worse than spending a lot of money on it and it doesn't get implemented, or it doesn't get implemented well, because then you've lost a lot more time, and you don't have the potential to get the efficiency gains that you want and need.
And this is one of the problems we had with Keystone, because the training did not take place as envisioned. Mm-hmm. And so people were not fully trained before there was a turnover of staff.
Yeah. Training, you have to have training for staff on every system. In general, you have to have more training, I think, in your organization.
Other comments by members of the council? Mrs. Patno, other comments by members of your committee?
Anything from anyone, or are we all set? All set? I think we're all set. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Pennington, when do you anticipate we might see this final report?
Let's say 3 to 4 weeks at the most.
3 to 4 weeks. And will that be another presentation by your team?
Yeah, we will do a final report presentation. Yes.
Okay, excellent.
So, as soon as I see all the staff comments, I can give the superintendent and the town manager a better idea of specifically when. I just don't know how many areas they may ask us to look at. I know we're probably going to get feedback from one person on the steering committee said, "Hey, I like what's in here, but I wish you'd done a little bit deeper dive in this one area." And if we can address that, we're going to do that. That's the opportunity, but also why we want to get out in front of you with some key issues so that you had that benefit of, hey, they're not going to bring us a bucket of money to spend next year, but we need to start thinking about where we might need to make some strategic investments. So,
thank you.
President Dixon, if I might.
Mrs. Lima.
I don't know where the 3 to 4 weeks production falls in our budget calendar, but I mean, I don't want to rush it either. I want a good quality final product, but I just want to make sure if possible, we can glean or let some of what this has to say help guide the budget for this year in some way, if that's possible. But I just wanted to call that out. I don't know where this final product will fall. And it sounds like some pieces might make sense, but others are going to need more discussion. But yeah.
That was the whole push for tonight's meeting.
Yeah.
This was rushed because the final report wasn't going to be ready for tonight. And I felt that waiting and even till the 28th of March is too late, because it'll be after the bigger discussions about town departments and the school budget in the next 2 weeks. So I think this is all of the value we need, because the entire report is going to be way too big to worry about doing in 1 year anyway. So I think we have enough information to guide our budget recommendations, and I will be prepared to provide the town manager's recommendation on April 4th. And so the final
report can come after that. It's not going to really adversely affect anything since we got the value of what we needed in the highlights for tonight. And everyone will have time to review the recording of the meeting, digest the draft report, and really, hopefully that'll help all of us to be more prepared for the other budget conversations we have in the coming weeks.
Thank you. Mr. Pennington, I would invite you to have a seat. We're going to open up for public comment, and there may be members of who are present here this evening or on Zoom who would like to make a comment. Is there anyone who would like to make a comment who is sitting here with us this evening? Please raise your hand. Please come forward. State your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Anna Dosrey-Skutu. I'm at 611 Weaver Hill Road. And I have to say, this was awesome. This is an awesome start for us to identify what the risks are, what needs to be mitigated, what needs to be fixed, and the synergy between the school committee and the town to be able to take the step forward for our children and our students so that we can make a better decision, informed decision with the keys and the roadmap that we have to be able to succeed. Because by being not reactive, but proactive, we can go so much further.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Are there any other members of the audience here this evening who would like to make a comment? Please raise your hand. Okay. Mr. Horton, who is on Zoom, who would like to make a comment? One hand, would you please bring that person in? Would you please state your name and address, please? We see Kim.
Please unmute yourself.
You did now. Hello, is there a Kim online now? She lowered her hand. Okay. Is there anyone else on Zoom who would like to make a comment? It can be on the topics of this evening or any other topic on which you'd like to make a comment. Okay, I see no hands up. There is no one in the audience who wishes to speak right now. So Mrs. Patino, would you please adjourn your meeting?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam President. Could I have a motion to adjourn at 9:22?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn at 9:22.
Second.
All in favor? Just raise your hand. Aye. Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Thank you for participating to all the members of the school committee. Members of the council, may I have a motion to adjourn at, I guess, 9:23?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call. Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. Motion passes. Our meeting is adjourned at 9:23. Thank you all for attending this evening, and we'll see you next Monday.